What is going on out there, everybody? And thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale. And of course, sitting next to me, the man that needs no introduction, just a permission slip from his PO to leave the county, Mr. Kyle Filson.
How's it going, everybody? Yes, I'm here. I just got out of the shower.
You smell amazing.
Thank you. We've been
still look
working
filthy.
on the a new deer stand.
Yep.
On the deer lease, not too far from your house. So that's what we've been doing today, trying to get prepared. It's supposed to be cool this time of year, but for whatever reason, it's gotten quite warm this week.
It's bad.
But it's supposed to cool off again next weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready for that. What have you been up to?
For those of you that follow along on my Instagram, you will see that last weekend, aside from going to the NASCAR track, now that I can let that whole thing out.
Oh, yeah.
My wife's birthday present, my son and I and my daughter, we all went together, and we got her, I forgot how many laps she got to take, but she got up to 142.9 miles an hour.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, she loved it. 4-speed. She's just shifting. She was going crazy out there. Got to drive by herself on Texas Motor Speedway. So we did that on Saturday. And then that evening, my son went hunting and ended up shooting a bobcat while he was hunting. Yeah.
Saw that.
And then my son, of course, skins it out because I think he's going to make a quiver. And what he did was brine that bobcat for 48 hours and then slow roast it. And then we had it in like a barbacoa type mix to make street tacos out of it.
Oh, that's
folks.
a good idea. So how was it? I've never had bobcat.
Catch, clean, and cook bobcat, folks. And it was awesome.
You know,
no joke. It was amazing. It was as sweet and tender as pork. It was just like pork.
I've heard people talk about eating mountain lion, cougar, whatever. Of course, I've never done that either. But I've heard, tales of like pioneers, that it was a delicacy.
Dude, I will tell you so much. I've had the opportunity to take a bunch of them, and I never did. Like you and I was hunting years ago. We pulled up there at Jacksboro. Remember, both of us were like, we're not shooting it. I had never really wanted to shoot one. I had seen them, like I said, multiple times, and never wanted to shoot one because I was just like, I don't,
what's the point? Right.
It's awesome to see them. But I'm not going to lie. Now knowing what they taste like, if the opportunity presents itself, it might happen. It changed me that much that I was I'll tell you how bad it is. I had coyote one time years and years and years ago. I'm going to try to cook a coyote. The next one I get, I'm going to try to cook it.
No, no. Yeah. I don't know what it is.
No, you'll try it. You'll try it.
All right, maybe.
You'll try it when you get over there. I'll get enough drinks in you. You'll try it. You'll try it when you get over there. Folks, we've had madness going on. We got all kinds of wild stuff coming up. Also over that weekend, I was in a music video for Ghoul Town.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So, I posted that on the Instagram. I got to hang out with Lyle Blackburn and all of his band and Todd Jenkins, which is a fella that makes movies. They're called directors. And so we had a blast. I got to learn a lot about how music videos are filmed. Chaz, I got to meet Chaz on there. He was, I think, what's the name of his band? Rocket Queen, I believe is the name of his band. So I got to meet a bunch of them. He was one of the extras. He's the barkeep in the video. So I got to be like a bounty hunter with all my stuff on. It was really, really a lot of fun, I will have to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed out. Lyle texted me earlier in the week. And
you were stuck over in the Metroplex.
Invited me, but we had a baseball tournament again.
Yeah.
But the boys have been on fire. We've won.
You did send me an interesting text.
Yeah, for his age group, Jacob's team is number 1 in the state, so that's pretty impressive. And just the last 3 tournaments, we've won 2 out of 3. We've only lost 1 game out of the last 15, so
pretty good.
They're on a roll, yeah.
On a roll.
It makes it more enjoyable when you go watch the games and they're actually like doing well, because that definitely has not been the way. I mean, I remember one season. I know nobody's on here for baseball talk. I'll make it quick. We were on a season and Jacob got invited to play for another team. And I was like, man, you can't do that. You've already committed to this team. Trying to teach my son a lesson. Like, you can't just bail when something better comes along. So I told that other coach no. And Jacob literally went 0-12 that season.
I remember this.
And I remember when it was over and I was like, hey, look,
I'm sorry.
I know I tried to prove a point, but I apologize. That's on me. That'll never happen again.
Yeah.
Because halfway through the season, I mean, every weekend sitting out there, it's like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But anyway, so
it's beating.
It's going good so far, and we got another one coming up this week. So,
well, we're going to be speaking also to Miss Shannon LeGro from the podcast Into The Fray about her 2 books. But before we do that, we both have interesting hunting stories that we've come up with.
Yeah, check this one out. It says, I live on 300 acres of land near Rennell in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. 250 acres of it is thick woodland. I grew up hunting and fishing, and I could identify an animal from a mile away. It was pretty late in the season, so my buddy and I decided to go deer hunting. We walked around and tracked deer for most of the day without even trying to take a shot. We were sitting on a hill, and a 6-point buck walked right into a clearing to where I had a clean shot. So I went to arm my crossbow, but I realized I left my ropes back up at the house. I told my buddy just to sit and wait while I ran up and got the ropes. Now, if you're not familiar with a crossbow, you need the ropes to cock the thing. Mm-hmm. You can't just go.
Well, you can, but not those.
Yeah, you got to be really strong to do that. Anyways.
Or lose a finger.
I told my buddy just to sit and wait while I ran up to the house to get the ropes. It took me a good 5 or 10 minutes to get them and to get back. Now, on my way back down the hill, my buddy met me halfway. He was obviously scared. So I asked him, what happened? He said, and I quote, "There was some guy sitting in the tree line watching me in a ghillie suit." My first instinct was to go look for the guy who spooked our deer and also was trespassing. Bigfoot was the last thing I had in my mind. So we followed what we assumed was another hunter from 100 meters away, a good hour or two. It was getting close to dark when we finally lost sight of the hunter. So we decided to cross the road and head up to the field for one last attempt of getting a closer look. I was a good mile walk to the top near the tree line, and then we sat and took a break for a while. We were chatting about the upcoming wrestling season and if I was going to join or not. Then something started moving out of the tree line a good 70 meters away.
Uh-oh.
We jumped up and I took aim. We waited for a few minutes, but nothing broke the tree line.
And all they got's the crossbow, right?
Apparently.
Okay.
It was getting to be almost pitch black out, and we could barely see anything. That's when something small and black came out of the woods towards us.
Skunk.
I say small, but in reality, I meant a decent-sized bear. So we started backing up slowly and yelling. The last thing we wanted to mess with was a mama bear with her cubs. The black thing stopped and didn't move. We backed up a lot more. My buddy pulled out a flashlight and started shining at this black thing. Now, I have poor eyesight, and I didn't have my glasses on. My buddy started to worry and kept saying, "That's not a bear." "Man," with a little bit of panic in his voice, "that's not a bear." Right? Can you imagine?
"Hey, buddy, that's not a bear, buddy."
My buddy started to panic and started to scream at the thing. Then he ran a good 10 feet towards it and screamed and banged on his chest. This caused the thing to stand up. It was almost like a man going from a crouching position to upright standing. This made me and my friend freeze.
This is what not to do, kids.
I didn't know what I was looking at or what my friend had just pissed off, but it was, if I was to guess, I would say this thing was between 7 and 8 feet tall and looked like it weighed around 500 pounds. It was extremely dark at this point, so all we saw was its outline due to the sun setting behind it. I don't know why I'm thinking of the poster of the Boggy Creek, where you see just like the outline. This was the most afraid I think I've ever been in my entire life. Whatever this thing was, it triggered a primal fear response in me that screamed, "Run." My buddy broke my trance when he started sprinting away. The thing started sprinting towards us too. I ran the hardest I've ever ran in my entire life. Now, I'm a track sprinter, and I can run decently fast. That thing was toying with us and could have easily caught me and my buddy anytime it wanted to. We didn't stop running until we were in my bedroom. I didn't hunt the rest of that deer season. I don't know what that was out there, but if I had to guess, my only guess is it was Bigfoot. This wasn't too long ago. It was late autumn 2019. My dog has been staring out the window for at least the last 3 months. She's going on 7 months old. I've never really been afraid of animals, but I feel like that Bigfoot is still out there. And I don't want to make it angry, and I definitely don't want to get caught out there alone with it. My friend and I saw a bipedal creature that night, and I'm terrified to see it again. Thanks, Reg. So what do you think of that?
Well, I don't blame him for not going back out the rest of the season.
I don't either.
But first of all, like I said, if you have the slightest idea that might be Bigfoot, I wouldn't run at it and beat my chest.
Yeah, whether it's Bigfoot.
And they probably didn't think of that. That's what they were talking about. They thought it was a bear.
Yeah.
And I understand you try. of course, we've never grown up around them, but you hear people, like you run at the black bears to scare them off.
That's what you're supposed to do.
You try to buffalo them. I bet when that thing started standing up, oh.
Well, see, yeah, because they thought it was probably a bear cub.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, crap, when it stood up, and you're like, uh-oh.
It's an 8-footer. Like, this is awesome.
Terrifying.
This is a bad, bad time.
What's your story, you said?
The one I've got here is about a deer hunter in western Kentucky. What really grabbed me, though, is it says that he is stalked by a green-eyed cryptid. Green-eyed cryptid.
Lovely cryptid.
That's right. It says, I was black powder hunting alone in a very rural area in Grayson County, Kentucky, far off the parkway. An off-grid property with old-growth timber surrounding it for many miles in every direction, with just a few seasonal hunting cabins that lie dormant most of the year. I've deer hunted this property all of my life and have never had any reason to fear walking to my deer stand in the dark. Until the 2008 season changed my life forever. I always rode my four-wheeler in and parked about 250 yards outside of my favorite spot and walked the rest of the way in to not spook any game before I got to my stand. So I shut off my four-wheeler and put on my backpack and heard a very large limb snap, and I thought it was a deer or an animal moving around maybe 20 yards away. So I didn't think anything about it. I just figured I'd spooked an animal in the woods. So I gathered my gun and hunting stuff and started walking down the 2-track trail without my flashlight on due to having good enough light from the moon to see where I was walking. And I hunted here a long time, so I knew the trail. The trail ended in a 15-acre hayfield surrounded by old-growth timber. So as I walked in the dark, I started to realize something was paralleling my every step just inside the woods. I walked and stopped, and it would do the same. Now, as I moved along the dark trail, the footsteps started getting closer to me. Now, I wasn't sure, but it sounded like it was bipedal. Why is that you can hear the difference?
I don't know, but you can. You definitely can.
You can definitely tell between deer or man.
Yeah, or horse or anything else.
It's just for something. It's strange. Now, but it makes me think of like your DNA. Are you programmed to know the difference? You know, like at night, laying in the dark in a cave. Are you programmed to know the difference? It may be somebody that's coming after you, not an animal.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't
know. It's weird. Or vice versa. So it says here, by the time I realized I had a serious situation on my hands, well, it was too far and too late to make it back to the four-wheeler safely, so I picked up my pace and made a beeline for the field. Now, I got to the field with my stalker pacing my every step. I moved swiftly towards my stand, 75 yards down the edge of the woods. Now, when I got within 10 yards from my stand, I heard another large limb snap, this time really close to the edge of the field on my left. Now, I stopped and turned my flashlight on and shone in that direction, and I observed 2 glowing green eyes about 10 inches apart. Now, instinctively, I raised my hands in the air and I yelled, "Get out of here," and I stomped my foot at it, not really sure what I was seeing. It just blinked its eyes once and never moved. I could not make out any details, just that it may have been crouched due to the proximity of the eyes to the ground. Now, whatever this was didn't run like most non-predatory animals would. I realized in that instance, the best thing to do was to take the high ground and get in the stand as quickly as possible. That whatever this was no more than 8 steps away, and if I shot at it in the dark, I would have been blinded by the muzzle flash, and it might have attacked if I missed. And with only one shot, I knew I'd be in trouble if I did attack. Now, that's good thinking.
Right, yeah.
With a muzzleloader, well, with any firearm in the dark, you're going to lose it relatively quickly. But with that muzzleloader, you'd be blind like crazy from that shot.
Yeah, because there's a lot of flame that comes out of those things. And it's hard to reload in the dark.
Oh, yeah. It's not, and then you're blinded and you got this monster. So I climbed up the ladder like a squirrel. And I watched, listened, and waited for what seemed an eternity for daybreak. This thing circled me in my stand just out of reach of my flashlight for over an hour. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was scared, but I remained calm, and I knew the only way that it could get to me was on the ladder. And I felt comfort in knowing if I had to climb up the ladder, or if it had to climb up the ladder to get to me, it didn't seem to exactly know how to utilize the ladder. So that's why it just kept circling, looking at the thing and circling, like it didn't know what it was doing.
Yeah. Man.
At one point in the dark, I heard what sounded like a small rock bounce off the lower end of the metal ladder. I waited with my gun at the ready, and I would have done whatever it took to stay alive and wasn't going without a fight. I could see a shadow moving, but in the dark, you never know if it's your eyes messing with you. But I could sense a real threat all lurking in the dark field surrounding my deer stand. Now, for whatever reason, this thing was stalking me and did so until just a few seconds before daybreak. I heard its footsteps fade into the woods where it had followed me from. I waited, watched, and listened intently until full daylight and descended cautiously down the ladder on high alert.
I would have called like 10 of my friends to come get me.
Right? Tell them
like,
I shot a big buck.
I'm not moving.
I shot a big deer. I need y'all to help me find it.
I need you to help me find it and bring a bunch of magazines and all of your firearms with you.
That's exactly right.
And they're like, what are you talking about? Trust me.
Yeah. Well, he goes on to say that as I walked back to my four-wheeler, I knew this thing wasn't gone, but hiding inside the forest, watching my every move. I moved across the field quickly and waited and listened before heading down the 2-track surrounded on both sides with trees. I knew this would be a perfect ambush spot with close quarters and not much room to evade or fight off an attack of any kind. I unsnapped my hunting knife sheath, got a firm grip on my black powder rifle, and went for broke, ready for battle of my life or death. As I rounded the corner where my four-wheeler was setting, I seen my escape and wasted no time jumping on the machine. As I turned the key and reached to hit the starter button, I heard another branch or limb snap with great force somewhere behind me. Says the bike fired up and I goosed the throttle hard, going through the gears as fast as I could, never looking back. And to be honest, I didn't want to know what it was and was just relieved that I had escaped this close call. I got back to my cabin, packed up, and left the area and went back home and cut the week-long hunt short. I didn't return until the following spring. I've often thought about this experience and since realized the days leading up to it, I didn't see any wildlife at all. The forest was eerily quiet and no activity of animals at all.
Man, that's so common in these stories, right?
It says, what it was, you ask? Bigfoot, Wendigo, or some sort of cryptid? I don't know, but I do know I experienced it, and I've never been the same when I enter the woods. I've changed my hunting tactics, how and when I enter the woods, always carry a backup sidearm, and I tune into what the creatures in the woods are telling me first and foremost. If the squirrels and birds are not moving around normally, there is a predator in their midst, and it just might be hunting you as well.
But if they perceive you as the predator, then it's always going to be quiet, right? Because everywhere you go, you're the predator.
You're the predator. But what I like the most about this, and you bring up predator, is Glimmerman, the predator, he had green eyes.
That's true.
So what if it's not the Sasquatch? What if it's the reason you couldn't make out anything is all you could see was its eyes?
And look, we're assuming it's hostile. Maybe it was just curious. I mean, it didn't do anything.
Maybe it was a juvenile.
It was just like kind of, interested in what was going on.
Maybe it was feeling a little randy.
What you need is some Jack Link's beef jerky.
That always.
You see the commercials,
Always.
they like that.
That's right.
Or any kind of gift. You hear about these gifting trees and things.
I would like to find a gifting tree because I would take some beef jerky.
Heck yeah.
100%. Okay, here we go. 2 stories down. We're going to jump on at the end of this break to talk to Miss Shannon LeGro. I brought my book to show. This is her first one that she wrote, Beyond the Fray, Bigfoot. All right?
Sorry.
She has another one called, what is it?
Paramalgamation.
And where is it?
At my house. Sorry, folks. I forgot we were filming today. I'm so used to just driving to the studio or now Cam's house to do the podcast that it never even dawned on me that we'd be doing video. So I get here and he's like, I hope you wore a nice shirt. I'm like, what are you talking about? I almost just came in what you saw me in a couple hours ago.
Only reason I changed shirts is because mine was all sweat ringed out. I just pulled this one on.
I had tree bark and sawdust all over because we were using a chainsaw. I completely forgot. So it's a really cool book. Maybe Cam will find a caption he can put up.
I'll put it in here somewhere probably.
But Shannon LeGro, she is the host of Into the Fray, which is an amazing podcast. You should check that out. She's been doing it for a long time. She's also the narrator on the Trail of UFOs, which is a small town monsters film. I think they're about to come out with another one, but you can go on Amazon and watch that right now. It's very interesting. These books are very cool. And we have her on today and we talk about it. So let's get into that.
All right, folks, we'll jump into the other side. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. everybody. We have been chewing the fat off air for a solid hour, and we decided we better hit the record button so we can chit-chat with our sister from another mister on this bad boy, Miss Shannon LeGro. What's going on, girl?
How's it going, gentlemen? Thank you so much for having me.
That's right.
Doing good, man. Glad to have you here.
For those of you that don't know, like we've already alluded to, we're going to be chatting with her today about not one, but two of her books that she's pumped out, Beyond the Fray Bigfoot and Beyond the Fray, and I love this word, Paramalgamation. And it's basically a wad up of kick-ass listener stories. And going into this month and all the strange and unusual things that are going to be firing up in the month of October, this is the perfect time for it. So without any further ado, we're going to dive into it. Shannon, first of all, everybody should know you. It's from Beyond the Fray, the podcast, for those of you that don't know. If not, you'll be tuning in to find out later, but of course you do. So getting into that, what kickstarted you to start piling these up into here to throw them in a book, and much less one, but two?
Well, I had kicked around the idea before, and I actually started kind of an intro chapter with the Boundaries Crossed episode, which was, I think, episode 8 of Into the Fray, Bigfoot story. And it sat in a folder for over a year. And then Michael Hoff, Jeff Hoff, emailed me, and he's like, hey, I love the show. Would you be interested in partnering up and, co-authoring some books with me? And he is a best-selling author himself. He's got like over 40 titles, and he lives in the fictional world of things. And he does post-apocalyptic stories and, kind of doomsday stuff. He's even done Westerns, which I love that genre as well. And we partnered up, and we have both been working on not only these books and getting those out, but we are, of course, co-owners of a publishing company called Beyond the Fray Publishing. And that also houses the same kind of books that, that Into the Fray likes to talk about and that you guys like to talk about here on Expanded Perspectives. So anything true crime, paranormal, UFOs, of course, Bigfoot is my favorite subject of all time. And doing the show and the books together was kind of a no-brainer. I just kind of needed that kick to get it going, and Jeff was able to provide that kick.
And I'm glad he did. I'm glad. No, what's funny is, and I wanted to ask you this too, after you started pumping out the books, did you notice that it's kind of like open the floodgates and more stories start pouring in when people realize that you're pumping them in books?
Definitely. And I think that also because a lot of people, because obviously the three of us can be quite intimidating, so they don't always want to come on the show, right?
Yeah.
So having the outlet of the books provides a place for them to go, okay, well, either I can just hop on the phone with somebody, they can send it in an MP3, or they could just send it in an email, and then I can just email them back and forth and ask them the questions that I would, quote unquote, over the phone in person. So yes, the stories have definitely poured in since then.
Is there, this is what's always funny whenever you talk to everyone that anyone that does these books where they're, retelling tales of whether it's Black-Eyed Kids, whether it's any book where you're kind of doing eyewitness tales, is it's almost like, well, when I pumped out the first book, like the day after, I got like one of the most amazing stories. And then, so that's what spurred on to do the second book to kind of get it rolling. Is that what you did, or did you already have it in your mind that you had enough that you kind of wanted to carry one way with the Bigfoot, and then you wanted to go one with another way, and you just separated them? So instead of making it chapters, you decided to make it books on their own.
Yeah, that was something we talked about, obviously, kind of right off the bat, was do we make it the, not to use the same word, but that I kind of came up with the paramalgamation, but do we want to make it the amalgamation of Bigfoot and ghosts and UFOs all in one? And we decided early on to go ahead and separate those things. Of course, everybody knows that has the book. Beyond the Fray Bigfoot actually does have a few Dogman stories in it. We are going to be doing Bigfoot 2. We are currently working on that. I'm trying to gather more stories for that. It was easy to pull, a first book together because I had 5 years of shows. Mm-hmm. But now we're kind of looking for new tales, and I want a lot more that you'll never hear on the show. I think it's important, of course, for people that consume Into the Fray a lot to give them surprise stories that they haven't heard on the show at all. So, pulling from maybe just Bigfoot for this next one will be where we go. We're not going to probably pepper in any Dogman stories for Bigfoot too.
Man, I'm glad you guys are pumping these out. And because, you know, as a fellow podcaster, when you're researching a topic, whatever it is, and it happens to be like a famous case, well, there'll be the same amount of stories all over the internet, no matter how many different blogs or sites they're on, but it's the same stories over and over. My favorite stories are actually listener stories. Now, we get a bunch sent to us, but I like to see the ones that are sent to other podcasters like you, and you've put them in these books. I have to ask. Now, I didn't read Beyond the Fray, Bigfoot. I have not read that one yet. Cam read that one. I read the newest one, Paramalgamation. Do you have a few moments to talk about some of the stories out of there?
Absolutely.
Okay. The first one I want to talk to you about is, can you tell the audience about Robert and how these spring breakers, I believe they were in Florida, had a very interesting run-in with a fella named Robert?
This is one of my favorite ones, and I've fought it for so long saying that I have favorite episodes because it's like picking your favorite kid and all this, and you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings that have come on the show before. I love all my guests, but I will say that the Robert episode is one of my favorites, and it is episode 158 if anybody wants to go actually listen to Nick tell this story. And this actually has an interesting tie-in for me personally at the end of it. But yeah, so as you said, spring break, we're going to head down to Florida. These kids are from Indiana, and they go down to Panama City to get their party on and hit the beach. And they're admittedly low on funds, so they kind of stay at this kind of frumpier place in a rundown part of town. And it's their first night there. They're probably getting settled in, and they get a knock on the door. And it's this very smiley guy, friendly guy, well-spoken guy. And he was their age, and he asked, hey, can I hang out with you? And at this point, they're like, there's probably, I forget how many Nick said there was, but there was quite the group of them. So they're like, what's one more? When you're a kid, you're like, who? Yeah, sure. Who cares? Come join us. But right away, Nick senses that there's something really, really off with this guy. He can't place it, but he knows something's off. So hours later, they're sitting around playing cards, and Robert shoots a look over at him. And Nick says that within the span of maybe 5 seconds, Robert's entire face changes. And we're not talking about he gave him a weird look. We're talking about the bone structure shifts, the hairline recedes, the hair actually grows shorter and then goes from a lighter color to a darker one. And he said even his eye color changed to a darker color. He's shocked, to say the least. And Robert's just sitting there smirking because obviously he knows exactly what he did. So Nick is, he's a teenager, a safe face, and he's not trying to freak out. So he ends up going outside to process this whole thing. And of course, he's wondering, did anybody else see this happen? Because this was insane. Nobody reacted to what he had seen or him going outside. Nobody seemed to notice anything. So the next day they're at the beach, and a female friend comes up and says, oh, Robert told me that he made his face change for you too. And he still says he regrets this to this day, but he was uncomfortable enough, and it shocked him enough that she brought this up, that he just kind of walked off and didn't say much. So at some point, Robert is asleep, or at least he's feigning sleep. And you'll know what I mean here in a short time. And he finds Robert's pants, his jeans or whatever, and he starts to go through it. And Robert has no ID, no wallet, no nothing. All he has in his jeans is a small notebook. And it's just pages and pages of names. Nothing else. No addresses, phone numbers, nothing. Just names. And he says there's just hundreds of them. So beyond the strange little, basically a little black book, his clothes were strange. He said there was no labels on it of any kind. Mm-hmm. The shoes were even off-brand. There was nothing that he could peg down as far as to figure this guy out in any way, shape, or form. And as I mentioned in the beginning, something that kind of threw him was the fact that this guy was so well spoken and he was extremely polite, almost like he was, just really worldly and older than the age that he claimed to be, and which was about 19 or 20. So admittedly, underage drinking was going on. No surprise there. So Nick also, this creeped me out because the second he told me this, I go, oh gosh, he doesn't remember Robert ever taking a sip of any kind of beverage, which you can imagine the beers were flowing or whatever was going on there, right? Not a sip of anything, and he didn't eat anything at all. He says that's not to say it didn't happen, but he was pretty much around Robert nearly the entire time, and he didn't see it. So kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean that's what I like about the story is they meet this stranger. He seems to be a traveler. He wants to hang out with them. He's very polite. He's very knowledgeable, has a lot of wisdom for somebody so young. He doesn't appear to eat anything or drink anything over the span of a few days. He's oddly dressed, like his clothes don't have labels or anything, no name brands of anything, which is not typical for somebody that's 19 to 20 years old, partying at Panama City. He has no ID, no wallet, only a notebook with names. He can change the way his face looks to people, like he's messing with them. I mean, to me, it sounds like a vampire, right?
Yeah, and I think I did. Maybe I didn't because I was just so creeped out. But I'm going, hey Nick, I mean, did he sparkle in the sun? I mean, let's be honest here, buddy. Like, what was going on? And yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head with the notebook thing. What does that mean? What did something happen to all those people? Is that why the names are in there? Are these people that he just happened to meet?
Those are the people he consumed.
Who keeps hundreds and hundreds of names? And Nick, to this day, he still thinks about Robert. And in touching base with the female, something that Robert had said actually, kind of stuck out was Robert had told her, I can't believe you've not met someone like me before.
Yeah, what an odd thing to say.
Which is so random. What a random thing to say. What do you mean someone like you? What in the world does that mean?
Right, and none of his friends ended up missing or anything like that. It wasn't like people were just dropping dead every other day.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It makes me think of
Nobody
the book,
went
The
missing
Outsider.
besides the face changing for the female friend and for Nick. I mean, nothing nefarious happened. But this is, like I said, this is something that stuck with Nick for a very long time. And he had never really told anybody this story at all. And the personal side of it that I mentioned was I'm not really a big fan of EVPs. Just on the whole, I just think they're really suggestive and they don't really get my, float my boat and get my blood boiling too much, really. But that said, once this episode aired, I got inundated with emails and messages, people going, you have to go listen to Time Marker. It's somewhere around 38:22, depending on what player you're using and all this and that. But it's very apparent. But everyone goes something, and almost has a southern accent in a way. It says, to me, is saying like, it says vampires. Like, just like that. It's a whisper in between. In fact, we were at that point, also weird in the show, was when I was asking Nick, what do you think Robert was? What do you think he was? And that's when this thing is, and they're going, vampires. And then I start to talk, and there's more mumbling in the back that I have not been able to pull out further. I'm sure someone more adept at that kind of a thing could do so. But I can't even tell you the inundation that I got after that episode came out. So, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you guys get it too. People, will email and go, oh, you got to go listen to it. And you're like, oh God, that could be like nearly anything. But this was the one time I'm kind of going, holy crap, that's actually pretty cool, especially with the timing of it. So who knows what Robert is? I've always implored Robert, if he's ever, heard the episode, to get in touch with me. I would love to talk to Robert.
It's so cool, man. I loved that story for many facets. I mean, because it could be a vampire, could be a demon, it could be who knows what, a guardian angel, something. He may not have even been there for an evil purpose. That's the way you kind of walk away from it, but it may not be. I just like the idea of this, whatever it was, traveling around, hanging out with kids. And when he mentions, like, you've never met a person like me, I mean, that's just an odd thing to say.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really like that story.
I also like the idea that maybe he's not evil.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, like maybe it is like a guardian angel, or it is just like a watcher here on earth. And that's just like the names in that book were people that he's been watching, or people that he's supposed to be watching. And there's so many ways that you could take that without it having a real evil connotation. I think to me, that makes it even crazier. It's one thing, because like we like to put it in a box. Like we love, this pod, it just, as being involved in this, and really everybody listening that loves this, like I've said before, we love to be able to put it in a box and to be able to label it. But when it's like that, there's too many open ends to that box. Like, is it a vampire? Is it an energy vampire? Maybe not an actual physical blood draining vampire, but drains like your energy. It uses something. Like maybe you come in contact with this thing and it'll eventually cause cancer. Whatever it does is it drains away, kind of like it's a radioactive thing. Maybe it is just a watcher. I mean, there's so many ways. That story alone could easily morph into a book or a movie or anything like that. That's why I said it reminds me of the book The Outsider.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, that's a very disturbing thing. And to also know how it's affected those involved.
And it makes me wonder, I've never actually said this out loud, it makes me wonder if Nick's name is now in that little black book.
Right.
You know?
If that was even Nick you were talking to.
Yeah. Like Interview with the Vampire, you were talking to Robert.
You were talking to Robert.
Remember when, I'm trying to think of who, when,
it's Christian Slater's
Christian Slater, that's who it is, when he's the reporter, right? And he finally realizes, you might have been talking to Robert.
Oh, I never thought about it like that.
That's why the vampire speech came from the back.
Oh, boy.
Your name was in his book.
I'm going to try to get a hold of Nick right now, quote unquote Nick, and see how
you're
he's
like,
doing.
hey, man, hey.
He's like, I'm in Vegas. All right, let's party.
Yeah, you're like, no, we're good. We're good. You're good. We're good.
Everything's shut down. It's not a good time.
That's right. I'm going to steal it away from this one because, like I told you, this one, of course, is from the Bigfoot book, which for everyone that listening, we all love the Bigfoot stories like that. It just doesn't get any better. This one is one that I had to bring up and I had to ask you about because, of course, it involves hunters. Well, one hunter for sure, multiples, but it's about the two hunters. It's about the fella named Chris and what he encountered. Yeah.
And, when you're talking about the group of, hunters, doesn't matter if it's guns or bows, like we were talking about before we actually hit the record button, a lot of the times you guys as a group, you might go to a location, but then you spread out, you have to go out solo. And that's how it rolls. So, hunters are a group that they're rich targets for having a possible Bigfoot encounter. And there's certainly several of those in Beyond the Fray Bigfoot. So yeah, this one we titled Two Hunters, and it is about a guy named Chris, as you mentioned. So Chris is 12 years old at the time, and he's stoked because he's finally allowed to go deer hunting, and it's actually family-owned property in beautiful Wisconsin. It's somewhere around 200 acres, so plenty of room to roam. And he would usually go with his father and his uncle and some of his cousins, and they'd actually, been there many times every summer, so it was kind of the usual thing. And his cousin takes him out to the woods and he goes, I want to show you something kind of weird. And he's like, all right, cool. And his cousin picks up a large stick and hits a tree several times. Okay, nothing. Okay, he hits it again. Chris is kind of going, what the heck you doing, man? And then after the first few times, he hears this loud thwump, whack in the distance. And he gives the stick to Chris for him to try it. And sure enough, he also gets a response. He's like, okay, that was weird. What the heck was that? And the cousin's like, okay, we'll check this out. Cousin lets out some kind of a scream or a yell or something. And they got a response to that. So that night, he finds out he'll be put out at the very far end of the property. So his uncle takes him out. He drops him off really early in the morning. I'm sure you guys know how that rolls. You got to start early, right? Mm-hmm. So the area was more thick brush and high grass and bogs and creeks. And so he finds the willow that holds his tree stand, and he admits it's kind of a rickety, kind of crappy tree stand, but he's like, okay, this'll do. He takes the first step on this tree stand and it breaks. So he actually had to jump to reach the next rung and finally get up to the tree stand. So time goes by and he's getting kind of chilly because it's a little bit cloudy out. And he knows he's being a good hunter because every squirrel and bird was starting to come in very close and they're not noticing him. And the whole day had gone by. And he's getting a little bored. He's not seen a deer. And now he's starting to go, I wonder where my uncle is. Like, it seems like he should have been here by now because the sun is starting to go down. And he's like, okay, well, this is a little bit strange. But the uncle doesn't show. So he decides he'd have to head back by himself. But he notices now that all of the wood sounds that he's so used to have completely gone. It's silent. And he admits that there is this fear that runs through him as if he's being watched. And now he knows he has to go, and he jumps from the stand. And he says there's a little light left, and he spots something rising up just off the game trail in front of him. And this is when it's cool to talk to people on the phone, and maybe they haven't told a lot of people. You can tell because they're really like taking a lot of breaks. And I remember talking to Chris, and this is when he kind of was, they're taking the deep breaths and they're like, oh God, here we go. And they're reliving it, and you can tell. And this is when it started for him. So Chris says it's huge. He goes, this thing was absolutely massive. And he was instantly terrified. And instinctively, he pulls the hammer back on his rifle and put it up to his shoulder. He says when he did, this massive creature picks up one of his legs and he places it on the other side of the trail. And he said this thing is about 7 feet tall and extremely wide. So it's covering the entire trail. And the fading light was behind it, so he couldn't really make out a lot of the details. Like I always ask about what does the face look like, this and that, but he couldn't make any of that out. All he knew it was just huge. So he stands there ready to fire, but he truly felt like he was going to die. Like no matter what choice he made, he was done for. This thing was way too big. And he says he feels like they stood there forever when all of a sudden it leaps to its right. And he hears it crashing, and then total silence, which he said was just as bad. Further down the trail, he sees a deer, which he's been waiting for a friggin' deer all day, and here it is. And the realization strikes him that he had come between this creature and its meal. So now he decides to run. He admits, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but I'm running forward. So he hears movement to his right, and he was actually pretty terrified that it would just go ahead and burst through the woods and grab him. He was just like waiting for it. He's like, okay, I'm just gonna go for it, but this may be my last run. So he actually makes it back to camp, and he immediately, of course, gets hazed by everybody because he's like, oh, look at Chris, he's so scared, ha ha ha, very funny. And the uncle goes, I tried to find you, dude, but I just couldn't. So he goes into the cabin. He sleeps with his rifle under his bed, which he admits he had to sneak it into his bedroom because the adults would not have allowed that because they would have been like, what the hell is your problem, right?
Yeah.
The next day they are supposed to go hunting again, but he gets out of it by saying that he just does not feel well. He's not up for it. Sorry, guys. And they say, no, we're up here to hunt. You're going to hunt, bro. So he goes, okay, well, I'll take the stand closest to the cabin. And he did. And he said it was that finally he's able to get a deer, and it was quick, and he was very relieved for that. But he unfortunately also had to help drive deer to the others. So that meant going further into the brush to do so, to drive it to, his uncle and his cousins and things to help them get their deer tags filled. But he was terrified the entire time. And eventually that day came to a close. And Chris told me that he honestly felt that his life was definitely on the line that day. And he has been back there since, but will not go to that part of the property, he says, ever again. And he also never goes in any wooded area without a gun, which I think is smart for anybody, even if you're not a hunter. I think it's ridiculous to go out into into any bush without a gun. But he says that they definitely know what a rifle is. And he does believe that because he leveled his rifle at this creature, it is what saved him. You hear the stories of people that are just kind of hiking in the woods and have a Bigfoot encounter, and they live to tell about it, obviously. But, in Chris's case, he swears that that's what saved him is, I got my bang stick, you're going to stay over there. I'm going to stay over here and we're cool.
Well, and there are a lot of those encounters that seem to be aggressive in nature. And it could easily have been because of it trying to eat, and it felt like something encroached on it, like something was trying to take its meal, or it was. I had done some just last week talking about these Bigfoot encounters that were aggressive, to where it almost seems like they were either involved in an overlapping territory of a male, something along those lines. And I like the way that he even said it, like you can tell that they know what guns are. Like they understand exactly what that thing is capable of doing. And that's why it saw that he had one. And I'm sure you have to imagine he's small. This Bigfoot sees it like, oh, okay, this is not going to be a problem. I'm fixing to squash this. Oh, wait a minute. It's got one of those things.
Yeah.
This changes everything. That's one of the things that I was wanting to ask you, if you had talked to Chris after all of this had taken place, how he still felt about going in the woods. Because most people that you talk to that have those kind of encounters, they're never quite the same. Like they'll either completely done with it and never go back, or they're like him. Is like there's certain places I'll go, and there's other places that I won't go. And it's almost like those people have an innate sense of where they might be. Like, they talk about sensitives. People are very sensitive. I just wonder if those that have those kind of, and I know it could all be in your mind. Of course, this is all speculation. You could always just make yourself, freak yourself out. We've all done it. But I just wonder if once your body or your senses get a taste of that, that's like your spidey sense going, yeah, that place might have one. And I don't think I'm going in there.
It's funny you bring that up, because one of the stories, one of my favorites, is I kind of just quickly mentioned the Bigfoot with half a dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that gentleman has another story in the book, and he admitted that it was one of the most terrifying things he'd ever been through. But he said it was PTSD, absolutely, but I also was completely addicted. And I had to go back out, and he did, and he ended up having another experience. And in that one, he actually didn't see a thing, but they were surrounded basically at a campsite with these things screaming at them. And his friend was, over there like, I need a diaper, bro. This is terrible. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
Get my brown pants. And, you're talking about a kid that was, just going for a walk in the woods to smoke a ciggy, and he sees this massive, terrifying creature, and you think that he would be totally done, but he wasn't. He went back out. But like in Chris's case, you said, what's his deal now? It's the same. I mean, it changes a lot of these guys to where maybe he was all pumped up. I finally get to go hunting. I'm a man now. I'm going to do this by myself. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then, oh crap. That's a real thing. There's monsters in the woods, and they decide maybe hunting's not for me. And it changes their whole life a lot of the times.
Well, that's what I like the most about it is, of course, I was raised hunting my whole life, same as Kyle, my son, my nephews, the whole thing, even when they were younger. And it's a big step in a young man's life if you're raised in that lifestyle, when you actually earn the respect and the adults believe you're safe enough that you can go do it yourself. That we're going to set you up and we're going to leave you alone. And that first sit by yourself, I was more nervous then than I was even getting like my driver's license. Like going and taking your driver's test, it's supposed to be like a big thing for kids. It was nothing compared to the first time I got to hunt alone. And then as it goes, because we've been in some, like, and Kyle and I've discussed before, in some really disturbing places that you go into the woods to where, like, it's dark when you get back into some of these places. And especially when you get up in the mountains and all that. So it's a big thing. But to have that added pressure of, like, I can't tell the adults what I saw. They're going to be like, oh, did you get scared? You're out there by yourself, little fella. You know, you worried. Like, I guess you weren't quite as big and what we thought was responsible enough to go. You've scared yourself, or that's all it was. So the pressure and the stress he's had on him since he was that age to think about that. And then to try to, like he said, oh, I don't feel like going. And they're like, no, you're going. You're going to get up and go like all the rest of us. And then he had to get up and still face that in the dark, even though he chose to be close. That's a lot of pressure for a young person to go through and to deal with. It's a lot.
That's a really good point. As far as, you kind of get your man card, right? When you go hunting by yourself, here's your man card. And then if you go running back and crying, screaming about you saw a monster in the woods, they're like, give me your man card. Guess you weren't ready, just like you said. So, that's a double whammy, because it's one thing to go and say, Mom, Dad, I saw a shadow in my room or a ghost in my room. Not that I'm diminishing that in any way, shape, or form. It's just, as you said, the hunting thing is such a rite of passage for these kids. So to have that double whammy and talk about really wanting to just keep it bottled up. There's a lot of reasons there to do so, not just the poking fun, but no more hunting for you. You ain't ready, like you said.
Yeah, right. Shannon, I'm going to ask you about one more. We don't want to give all of them away. There'll be no reason to get the books, but I have to ask you about this one because this is from the newest book, and we get messages all the time about fae folk and things like that. There's a story in there about some boulders. Could you tell our listeners that story?
Yes, this is a cool one because that's why it would be in like a paramalgamation, because they're some of my favorite stories, whether it's for the books or for the show. They are the difficult to classify ones. It's not in a neat little snug category like a Bigfoot or a ghost or a shadow person. Not that we know what shadow people are, or even what a Bigfoot is. I'm just saying this is especially one of those that is a perfect example of that. And that is the story of Chris. And this is episode 143. If anyone wants to listen to him tell this story, it was initially going to be actually just for my insiders, but I thought it was important enough to get out there to quote unquote the masses, just so that I could get Chris and myself as much feedback on this as possible. So I decided to make it public. But okay, so Chris is in his early 20s, and he says his family is under great financial stress. So lots of fighting had been going on. And actually, he and his father had gone in an argument, and he said it was in no way resolved. They were both still really pissed. And he remembered that his truck was at his grandmother's house, who lived a few miles away. And being that he was ticked off, he's like, I could use a walk anyway, so I'm going to walk and get my truck. And he says it was a very dark, clear night, and it took some time for his eyes to adjust. Like, that's, how dark it was, basically, is what he's getting at. So to his right is a large boulder field, which is interesting to some folks that I'm sure listen to your show and mine, which might ring some bells as far as maybe some missing people go. I don't know. So a boulder field to his right that was associated with an old rock quarry. And it actually paralleled the road for a good distance. And he hears a moan come from just above the boulder field. He said it wasn't even in the boulder field. He specifically said, like, it sounded like above the boulder field. So figuring it was just a coyote, some echoes going on, he keeps going, whatever, no big deal. A second moan sounds, but nowhere near where he heard the first one. So immediately after comes a third, then a fourth, and then a fifth. And this is all from different places behind him. He says the sounds begin to converge together as if they were calling to one another. Creepy. He could now tell that they were all together and heading towards him, all from behind him, though. So he is now properly and rightfully really, really frightened. He cannot see them, but he knows that they're coming closer. And then when they got about 30 feet from him, everything went silent except for the patter of feet or paws. And he said that. feet or paws. He could not make them out which one it was. So also very creepy. And this is on the gravel road. He can hear this. And he can tell that they formed a semicircle about 20 feet from him. So very close. But again, it's really dark out. That's why he made the point of saying it took time for his eyes to adjust. And then this strange clicking noise starts. And he said it reminded him of the sounds that the Bushmen from the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy made. That's the best thing that he could come up with, right? This clicking sound. So one would click and then another one would do the same thing a few seconds later. And then back and forth they would go like that. Now, he knows for sure that this isn't coyotes now, right? Like that they don't make sounds like that. That's just not something that they do. So he's still trying to move down the road as quickly as possible, but also trying to see what was behind him at the same time. But it's just far too dark. So as if this, commotion going on behind him wasn't enough, something else starts to happen. And this is when, it's really getting weird now. And this is where it becomes, you're like, what do we classify this as? This is actually cool and creepy. He begins to feel really, really drowsy. And he told me that as odd as this sounds, he goes, with me being in possible, real, true mortal danger, he was intensely fatigued. And really all he wanted to do was sit down and go to sleep. And he sees to his right that in the middle of the boulder field, there was this massive one near the center of it. And he immediately forms this plan to get over and climb atop of it and sit down and go to sleep or rest, or that was just his main driving force. So he does this and he sits down and he notices, okay, this isn't so bad because there's no sagebrush around. So nothing can hide in here. And the fatigue is growing and then the clicking is stopped. So sure enough, he slumps on his on his left side and he falls asleep. And he doesn't know how long he's out for, but he's awakened to something touching the back of his head. No thanks. Yeah. Big on the no list there for me. He jumps up to find it's very dark still, so he probably wasn't out for that long. And he's only able to hear the patter of, again, what sounded like bare feet running away from him. At this point, he kind of went away from the paws at this point, because now he said it was like kind of slapping on some boulders. So it was tantamount to bare feet to him. So adrenaline's pumping through him now after something touches him.
For sure.
And yeah, that'll kind of do it, right? He makes his way to the road, and not a minute later, the damn clicking starts again. And they're everywhere but in front of him. So once again, he's kind of, half moon shaped. Everything's behind him. Another wave of fatigue hits, but he's determined not to stop. So he's getting confused about feeling tired, but at the same time, he's being stalked. So why can't he just want to stay awake and get to safety? So he said he almost felt like he was drugged, like he had absolutely no control over his body. And he's actually stumbling now at this point, even nearly falling over numerous times. And he's getting disoriented as to where he is. He doesn't remember if he simply tripped or hit a rock, but he ends up falling forward onto the ground. So, this is all getting kind of dramatic now, like actually pretty scary, because now he has there's no faculties about him. So he's starting to crawl with, still the need to get away present, but he found that was even too hard to do. He sits up on his knees and he spots another boulder and he decides to head over to it. And so he starts to climb up this boulder, and he's basically on all fours, just trying to climb up the damn thing. And for the second time, he passes out. Super weird, right?
Right, yeah.
So he wakes up and he's flat on his back, and he can still see there's stars in the sky. So it's still dark. And he hears a grunt sound kind of above where his head was, followed by a similar sound down by his feet. And then there's movement off to his left. And he says he was still frightened, but he had, no strength to move. Guess what? Goes to sleep again. And I know some people are probably going, come on, man, get up, dude. That's where you are at this point in the story.
This guy got
like,
narcolepsy
is this for real?
or what?
Yeah, this is like, it's unbelievable, this story. That's why it's such a crazy, cool story. But he wakes up again. The sun is finally rising. He sits up and he looks around, but he sees nothing. There are no wounds on him. There's no indication that any tomfoolery had gone on, nothing strange. And he no longer feels tired. So he makes his way to his grandmother's house and he got his truck and he heads home. And, he said, I have no clue who or what in the world was stalking him that night or what caused the overwhelming fatigue that overtook him. But he did say to me, though, he did not feel that this was Bigfoot related in any way, shape, or form. So where does that leave us? Like you said, is it a Faye thing? I think so. I don't know.
I think so because there's so many stories surrounding like boulder fields. And this is particularly in like Ireland, Scotland, Scandinavia. They talk about that. Like even when they're building roads, if there's particularly large boulders or boulder fields, that they have to build the road around the boulders rather than remove them because it pisses the Fae folk off. And, him being drowsy, it kind of reminds me of like the stories of Puckwudgies where these are tricksters and they have an ability to, I don't know what the word is, glamour you or put you under some kind of spell, lure you to sleep, and you'll wake up sometimes in the Fae world and, you're not supposed to drink anything or eat anything offered by the Fae. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. I think it's a really cool story. I think there's cool stories in both books. People need to run out and buy these. This is Beyond the Fray Bigfoot and Beyond the Fray Paramalgamation. Shannon, before we get out of here, tell people where they can get those books. Tell them about your fantastic podcast, Into the Fray, and talk about what you're working on with Small Town Monsters coming up.
Absolutely. So Into the Fray, you can find that at intothefrayradio.com. And of course, any podcatcher or YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the usual haunts for that. And then, of course, the book's on Amazon. And if you wanted any signed copies, you can go to beyondthefraypublishing.com. And as I kind of mentioned before, we are trying to cultivate some more stories for Bigfoot Round 2. I think that, we were wondering, are we going to do another paranormal one? Or, but Bigfoot is kind of in the forefront for me a lot of the times. It's one of my favorite subjects. So it was kind of a no-brainer to just go ahead and plow forward with Bigfoot too. So if anybody's interested in, maybe you don't want to come on a show, I totally get that. You can always email me, Shannon, at intothefrayradio.com with any correspondence, of course.
Very cool. And what about the upcoming work you're doing?
Just, trying to record as much for the show, but also I will be heading back out with Small Town Monsters and, of course, director Seth Breedlove. We are going to be doing On the Trail UFOs Round 2. And the first round of filming is actually going to start in about a month, first part of November. So super excited to get back out on the road and do that. So we're going to be hitting up a couple different states for season 2. And excited to see where that takes us because we got to talk to a lot of incredible people for the first season of On the Trail UFOs, which of course is available on Amazon Prime right now, free. You guys can go check that out now. And yeah, if anybody's, interested in kind of finding out, I don't even know if I could say what state we're going to. I don't know that that's been announced, but if you're kind of wondering and you have cool UFO stories, get in touch with me. And then if you're, around the area, maybe we could zip over and talk to you for On the Trail UFOs too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, sharing these cool stories in these books. They're absolutely amazing. And thank you for doing your podcast. We'll definitely have to have you back on.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Shannon. Expanded Perspectives is supported by you.
our listeners. We make Expanded Perspectives free for you to listen to, but it definitely isn't free to produce. You can support the show monthly by signing up for Expanded Perspectives Elite. Just go to expandedperspectives.com/elite/. Or go to the website and click on the Elite tab and sign up for exclusive access to new Elite episodes every month, as well as the entire back catalog of every single Elite show we have ever done. That's over 220 episodes, all for only $5. Your monthly donation is used to pay for monthly data storage, editing software, music, sound effects, audio recording equipment, and research materials like books, videos, newspaper articles, and other restricted information locked behind a paywall. Also, if you enjoy Expanded Perspectives and you want to help us out, please rate and especially write us a review on iTunes or anywhere else you find us. Reviews are key to keeping Expanded Perspectives on the charts where people can find our show. Thank you so much for listening. We couldn't make Expanded Perspectives without you.
And we are back.
Yes.
Here we go. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Look, we've known Shannon for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah.
A good bit. And yeah, these are some really, still again, the story, Robert. I can't.
Man, that's a good one.
That's a good one, man.
I like this story of the vampire.
Yes.
Like it's a real thing. And for all I know, it is a real thing.
What, like I said, what if you were talking to Robert?
Yeah.
See, I don't know.
How many times do you run into somebody like Robert that's a vampire and you don't even know about it?
Or like Colin, an energy vampire. Y'all got to watch like what we do in the shadows.
Yeah, that's
It's
excellent.
the best.
Excellent. But the books are great too. And this
Yeah.
is what I like because like everybody that's watching this or listening to this, for those that are listening to the podcast, you know, you're kind of familiar with Bigfoot or these sightings of shadow people or face stories or whatever. And lots of times when you go on the internet, it's the same old stories. What makes these so good is it's kind of like when we do our listener stories. These are stories I've never heard of before, sent in to her by her listeners. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in Bigfoot or if you're interested in all things paranormal, then you need Paramalgamation. I think they're very cool.
They're doing some others.
Yeah, they're going to be doing more. They're doing another Bigfoot one.
Yep, they're doing that's the next one, isn't it?
And what I also like about the book is it's not super lengthy. I mean, it's just a really good read. You could knock it out in a weekend very easily, or if you're going on a trip somewhere and you need to kill a couple hours, it's very good, very interesting
Like
stuff.
you said, I like it because it's stories that you don't normally hear anywhere else. You can't normally find anywhere else.
I've never heard any of them before.
Yeah.
You know, where
We got to look, folks, legitly, we're working on one right now. We have a mess up.
Yeah, trying to put
coming.
it together.
So we're putting it together like now as we speak. So hopefully it'll be done before the end of the year.
That's right. And speaking of stories, here's one of our listener stories. Check this out. It says, it has taken me a long time to come to grips with what happened to me in December of 2014. But I stumbled across your show and thought this would be a good platform to share. In mid-December of 2014, I flew back to visit my family who was staying at my dad's. One night, early morning, I was woken up by the sound of my dad's coffee machine being turned on. But when I opened my eyes, I was paralyzed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. And there were 3 ghostly figures that looked like skulls with smoke bodies circling over me.
Whoa.
Yeah. They were going inside of my chest, which was actually causing physical pain. I could hear my dad and stepmom talking in the kitchen, and I tried to yell and escape, but I couldn't. I was terrified, and the only thing I could think to do was to visualize a burst of white light coming out of my body, at which time they all disappeared. I could move now. I got up, and I went to the bathroom, and I tried to process what I had just experienced. I've had nightmares before, and this wasn't like any nightmare I've ever had before. As I experienced waking up before this took place, instead of being jolted awake with labored breathing after a typical nightmare. Now, I didn't tell anyone about my encounter, and instead tried to do some deep research and try to figure out what happened. That's when I discovered sleep paralysis, which is as close to what I could describe my experience was like. The thing that differed was that I was left with this pain where these things had actually attacked me. My only way to describe it is that it felt like what people describe anxiety feels like, but in a more of a physical form, with no mental thoughts attached to it. It was this constant tightening of the chest. I flew back to San Francisco the following week, at which time I experienced these visits twice more. But there was only one being each one of these times. One experience, the being was trying to smother me, and another was sexual. Each one happened around the same time, around 3:30 a.m. I couldn't figure out why I was being attacked, but decided to ask a friend if she knew of any Reiki massage therapist or something like that, because I was left with this constant chest pain. I started seeing a woman, and when she would work on me, I could feel this thing moving around my body, as if it were trying to hide. I carried this feeling around for about a half of a year, but it always felt foreign to me, like it wasn't a part of me. One evening, I was visiting a hot springs when I was approached by an old woman in her late 70s, who I'd never met or talked to before. She looked at me and kept staring at me. She looked at me in the eye, and she eventually came up to me. She put her hand where I had been experiencing this feeling. She held it there for a moment, and suddenly this foreign anxiety feeling completely disappeared. I was blown away. I tried to thank the woman and talk to her, but she only seemed to speak German, and walked away right after. I know how crazy this sounds, which is why I journaled it, but just recently started talking about it. Since these experiences, I have yet to have another, and the chest pain hasn't come back since. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, or if anyone else had had similar experiences. Thank you, Jenny. Now, Jenny, thank you for sending that in. I have heard of several stories of sleep paralysis. My own sister-in-law has told me that she has had several sleep paralysis over the years. I think I've experienced it like maybe once or twice. I never saw any creepy creatures or aliens or anything, but I do remember, it may even be not sleep paralysis, maybe like lucid dreaming. I was somehow aware that I was dreaming, and I wanted to wake up, but I couldn't wake myself up. And then it just felt like I was really moving slowly, and then I could wake myself up, if that makes any kind of sense. But I didn't have any experiences with anything in the room. I didn't feel creeped out. The only time I ever felt creeped out was one morning when the twins woke me up at like middle of the night. They were like 4 years old, and they're like standing above me.
Yeah.
A small outline of this figure after I just got doing hours of research about extraterrestrial abduction.
And they're standing at the foot of the bed.
You told me you almost killed your son.
Yeah.
From then on, they tapped you on the toes.
They tapped me on the feet. Yeah. Yeah. He couldn't have been
but
more
I've
than
never,
7, 8.
I've never heard of actually causing physical pain. That seemed to last for a while. And I've definitely heard of people feeling like they're being smothered. This is like the old hag syndrome.
It almost sounds to me like something was in the process of doing whatever it is they do. And when she woke up, it locked part of it in there or caught one of them in there, almost like a trap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like while you're in that sleep mode, they're passing through you. It's still not good. And then that one, boom, you've closed the door now, and there's like one in there. My favorite part of that story is the old German woman that just sees and knows.
She
walks
knows.
up there and is like,
does some kind
Kalima.
of, yeah, does some kind of crazy spell. And it's
and just takes the thing with it. And just like, get out of here.
Yeah, who knows? But a very cool story.
Yes, that's awesome.
And if you have any cool stories of your own you'd like to share with me and Cam, please don't hesitate. You can email the show, expandedperspectives@yahoo.com. Or if you'd love to hear your beautiful voice on the show, you can call our hotline. And that number is 888-393-BRUD.
Brud.
BRUD, or 888-393-2783.
I'll try to put it right there again.
Cam, what do you got planned for the rest of your week?
Let's see. I'm not really sure. This is going to be the week since last weekend we were busy. This will be the weekend that I'll probably get in the woods.
I'm free and clear. So I have this one weekend. It's like one of those deals where you're so busy all the time and you finally have a weekend free.
Yep.
My wife likes to try to fill those weekends up with stuff, but I had to put the kibosh on that. And I said, hey, like, don't plan anything. Like, I don't want to do anything.
That tough, y'all. He was like, hey, I really don't want to have to do anything. Is
yes,
that okay?
Ma'am. Could you please, ma'am? Yeah.
Would you not make me do something today? Can I just sit around the house?
So I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. And that's actually exciting.
Yeah.
I may do
that's
nothing.
kind of like me, is I don't have any set in stone plans.
What will most likely happen is I will probably
we're going to go hunt.
Yeah, I'll do that. But I mean, I probably will. I'm thinking of maybe smoking a pork loin or something on the smoke or something, because I'm going to be around all day. You know, you slow roll it all day long, and then come dinner time, and it's ready to eat. That's my game plan. Of course, something could mess that up.
Well, if you were awesome, you would get a deer Saturday morning.
Yeah, then that would totally change the plans of the day.
Or you could just go in the morning and go get one, and then you could cook it Saturday while we were hunting.
Slow smoke a venison loin?
Yes, and then we could eat when we got done hunting.
I would be down with that.
I'll go get some bobcat. Brandon's got leftovers.
I would like to try that. I really would.
Dude,
that would be cool.
Good. It's real good.
Very, very cool. Well, if you guys want to follow the show, as well as me and Cam, you can follow us pretty much all forms of social media. Be careful out there. Stay out of trouble. Until next time, I'm Kyle. He's Cam.
Peace, y'all.